All eyes really were on former Vice President Joe Biden last night. Frankly, his performance in the first debate was lackluster, but last night seemed to fend off attacks coming on all fronts.
So now let's talk about the path forward. How will Biden's message on race, on immigration, on healthcare, on the environment, and other issues resonate with voters? And how would his team rate his performance last night, as well as that of other candidates? Joining us now via Skype is Biden surrogate, State Senator Darius Brown of Delaware. Thanks so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
So how do you think the Vice President did last night, sir?
The Vice President did phenomenal last night. We know that the Vice President was expecting to be attacked on every side because he is leading in this race, and Americans all over the country are supporting him and wanting him to be our next president of these United States.
So, Senator, obviously the big night and the contention there last night was on criminal justice reform with Senator Cory Booker. The Vice President countered against Cory Booker's own record. Do you think that is going to be a continued line of attack if Cory Booker continues to go down this road?
Well, unfortunately, because the Vice President is leading in this primary election, many of the opponents in this primary have taken on many of the approaches of President Donald Trump to be divisive. And Vice President Biden has continued to rise above all of those things and stick to the issues about how he looks at how he can restore the soul of our country and how there are limitless possibilities for us as a country through his leadership. So whatever other candidates want to do, Vice President Biden is focused on solely conveying his message to our country and ensuring that we win the election next year.
Yeah.
But doesn't Senator Booker have a legitimate critique here that Vice President Biden was one of the primary architects of the criminal justice system, of the system of mass incarceration that we have today? So if he got it so wrong then, why should we trust him to be the one to dismantle that same system that he helped to construct?
I don't believe that he got it so wrong then, and I don't believe the critique that Senator Booker is trying to give to Vice President Biden is a critique that he cannot also take when he was mayor of the city of Newark, New Jersey. What Vice President Biden understands is that the work that he did was work that was also supported by many members of the Congressional Black Caucus, many African-American mayors around the country, because there were great issues in the mid-90s around crime, homicides, and drugs. And so Vice President Biden has always heard from his constituency in Delaware and friends and leaders around the country. And as a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, he continued to work on their behalf with the passage of the crime bill.
But we're talking about the crack cocaine disparity. We're talking about more death penalty offenses. We're talking about mandatory minimums. We're talking about 3 strikes laws. I mean, do you think that was the right direction to take at the time?
I believe that what Vice President Biden has presented as he's running for president in his plan around criminal justice and criminal justice reform is what we need in our country. And with that, he'll continue to work in states with elected officials and others to make sure that we create a criminal justice system that is restorative and not just punitive.
So, Senator, one of the main things we saw last night was really a lot of people not just attacking the former vice president, but really the former president implicitly. There was a lot of rejection of President Obama's vision and policies for the country over his 8 years, despite the fact that he's overwhelmingly popular in the Democratic Party right now. Do you think it was a mistake on the other candidate's part to take that tack?
I think it was rather ironic for many of those that were in the debate last night who benefited from President Obama and Vice President Biden during their administration, asked many of them to fundraise for them and door knock for them and speak to voters on their behalf for them to get elected, to now want to disown their connection to the Obama-Biden administration. And Vice President Biden is committed to the work that they've done as president and vice president. He looks forward to building upon that foundation as president of the United States. So we don't run from the success that we had. In fact, what we see in today's economy is because of the foundation that was built then. We look for Vice President Biden to continue to be counted upon by Americans to deal with the hard issues and pressing issues in our country.
Some of Vice President Biden's chief critics and primary opponents were not on the stage last night. I'm namely talking about Elizabeth Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders. What did you think of their performance on night one of the debate?
I think Vice President Biden's chief opponent, which is the opponent of every Democrat, is Donald Trump. And as Vice President Biden expressed last evening, that all of us.
Sure, but he's got to win the primary first. He's not there yet. Let's not start the coronation. So what did you think of Sanders and Warren's performance? Because they lay on a very different vision for the future of the country than the vice president does.
I think if you look at Vice President Biden's record, what you recognize is that he's been someone that we've called on as a country to deal with hard issues. And at the end of the day, we need someone that can execute and implement and get things done. And he has a record of doing that.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, Senator. We really appreciate your input on the debate last night.
Well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Absolutely. We'll have more Rising for you after this.